With the general election just a matter of months away, barring unforeseen circumstances, a cross-section of stakeholders have been emphasizing the need for eligible persons to register and procure their permanent voter cards in order to be able to vote for their preferred candidates. However, they say there is need for more public orientation and awareness in terms of quality of leadership to elect, as well as the roles of the Independent National Electoral Commission and civil society organizations. Joining us now to look at this matter is Ejiro Umukoro, who is a policy advocate and author. Lady Umukoro is an award-winning journalist and has won journalism's most prestigious award, the Pulitzer. Welcome to Newsday. I'd like to...
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Good to see you, Cynthia and Stephen.
That's me, but we're glad to see you. You did get my name right. It's lovely to see you. We do have a reputation for being a journalist who goes against the flow. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, you drew attention to what was happening behind closed doors in terms of gender-based violence thriving. So based on your insight, I'd like to ask what we should be looking at in terms of the traits of the presidential aspirants ahead of 2023, in terms of what we might have missed.
That's a very good question you asked, because at the point where we are in Nigeria, leadership, the quality of it, the spirit of it, and the direction it's taking us, it's now the most crucial conversation. If you go on the streets, that's what people are talking about. People are asking, what is that leadership? Because right now, what we need is the kind of leadership that will change us from the direction Nigeria is going right now. We need the kind of leadership that we quickly, immediately, without, narrowing the conversation and dealing with insecurity with kid gloves. We need a more decisive leadership in that manner. I mean, we talk about a situation where as far back as the 8th Senate, which was led during the time by Dr. Bukola Saraki, you had the entire Senate work towards, trying to see how we can get the Tucano bombs and all of that. So much effort were made. They had to go to the US Senate and all of that. All of these efforts were made at the time. And today, this government has made that possible. But the question is, what has it done for us? Is it just an infrastructure we just place somewhere and it's not useful? And Nigerians are saying, no, the direction we're going, we can't go there anymore. We need somebody with the kind of fresh leadership, right? The political will, somebody who can speak truth to power, somebody who understands that the cost of living is high and something has to be done about it immediately. We need someone who will understand that you have to make sure that the security of people's lives and property are safe and that there are jobs. Imagine 70% of our population are young persons. Of this number, statistics are showing so far, very sad one, that up to 35% of this number are either unemployed or underemployed. Now, that's a catastrophe about to happen. That's another foundation for which if we're not careful as a country, we might be inciting persons who, because they're not busy, they're not engaged, their capacity are not utilized to their fullest, may just, get distracted, can become more vulnerable, can be easily ensnared to be part of something they shouldn't be in the first place. So we need that kind of leadership that we address this issue and make sure that, look, you know what? It's time we fix Nigeria.
Indeed, it's time. But there's been more emphasis on leadership here. Now, in any society, democratic society, there's always the people, of course, and of course the government as well. Now, talking about the citizen electoral participation, are people carried along on matters of national discuss? And what have we, been witnessing most times? Is it an imposition when it comes to public policy formulation regarding citizens' representation in governance as well?
Here is what we have in Nigeria, a situation where there is an alarming public distrust in our electoral integrity. We have a situation where there's an alarming apathy amongst people. And why has this continued to exist? It's because even though we have reform bills, right, that could make a difference, these reform bills are not being effected. There are reform bills that come as far back as from the 8th Senate till date. From the Police Act, the Police Reform Act, to the PVC drive, engaging them. We have not seen enough of the proper budget driven to this area. I happen to have spoken to some INEC officials, and one of the key concerns they mentioned is the fact that there's not enough budget. And if there's not enough budget, and when it is disbursed, it is not used to drive the conversation of one, eliminating as much as possible the voters' apathy, also introduce and enable and build capacity among the citizenry in terms of how they can monitor and ask for electoral reforms. We talk about the BVAS. I was so shocked as I was going about town, I kept asking persons how much they are aware about the BVAS. And some of them are like, is this still ongoing? I didn't even know there's registration going on. A situation where people don't even know that there's registration going on is disturbing. In other words, we're seeing a situation where we need INEC. We need the the civil society groups. We need the women group. All of them need to be very interested. We have been in a country where many Nigerians are so disconnected from politics. They do not understand that politics is about decision making, and that the person at the helm of affair, who is considered the leader to drive this conversation, who they also must be on top of the game by making sure they also hold him accountable. We need that kind of accountable leadership where you know that you're coming into that situation or that position of responsibility is because people put you there. And your responsibility is to make sure that you listen to the voice of the people and drive this conversation. So we need more mobilization in that regard. We need more retraining and training of ad hoc staff who are going to be used in this process. We need a situation where the electoral bill, the recently amended one for 2019, is affected by political parties, from the ad hoc delegates, whether at the ward level, at the national level, at the local government level. The women inclusion provision that has been made that parties should embrace should be there. Parties, even on their own, should begin to continue right now as we speak on a PVC drive. Enlighten the people, bring them on board. They will need to also create more polling units in Nigeria. I was with a taxi driver the other day, and one of the complaints the taxi driver said to me was this: I cannot go to a polling unit that is too far from my house. I will not bother voting. I'm going to sit at home, I'm going to watch TV or play football or just chill. Now, when you see a situation like this, that's a gap that needs to be filled. And we want that to happen. So that is one way we can really address it. It's a multifaceted process, but the conversations should start now, the activities should start now, the persons who will be trained from the ad hoc staff to even the main staff themselves, the training should continue now consistently, and they should be on the media. I don't know why INEC is not partnering with the media to ensure that this is a go-to assignment that they should follow as a task that must be resolved. And then the media as well, by all means, the media needs to come on board. Public service announcements, really engaging the citizens to be more aware, to be conscious about their decision-making power and their agency as choice makers to change the dynamics of the election next year. It's going to be the conversation now on all media spaces, as a matter of fact. That should be the onus of them now. And then as citizens too, when they listen to the media, they want to pick out the substance and say, you know what? I have been so disconnected, that's why I'm getting what I'm getting. If your PVC does not count, if your vote does not count as a citizen, why do the party politicians in this context, many of them want to buy your PVCs? It's because it counts. So we need that re-engineering, that rechange of mindset of our citizens to understand that, look, it's about civic political engagement. You cannot do without both.
I really appreciate what you had to say about that. But one of the, awareness is one thing, and you touched on mindset. We're at a point where Nigerians have more or less had enough in terms of like, oh, does my vote really count? I don't even think it matters. People are actually in a state of docility. I'm going to borrow that word from one of the guests we had recently. So what can we do on our own to actually wake up to the fact that my vote counts? Apart from just raising awareness, what can we do to actually have that shift in our mindset to know that 2023 is not going to be like other years that we've experienced in the political scene?
Recently, INEC came out to say that there were at least 1 million votes that have been disqualified because they did not meet up certain standards. That's a large number. So there is one thing to vote on the one hand. Remember, it's about civic duty, civic engagement. It is your civic right. We're in a country where the idea of patriotism, the idea of civic responsibility, the idea of civic engagement is not taught to us from when we are infants. From the crèche, where they should be have been exposed to the map of Nigeria, for example, the colors of Nigeria, for example. It's subliminal. It can be embedded from, in their head. At the family level, what is the conversation between family members? Children actually listen to parents when they speak. How much are parents actually setting the example? Children model the adults. If adults are not doing what they should do, children will not model it. And by the time they reach 18, there's that dissonance, there's no care, there's apathy, and they don't see that they can make a difference. A situation where you've been asked and given a window since June 28th of last year to go and register for your voter's card. But what you give priorities is buying Ashoebi. There's a problem there. It means that our people need to understand that if you can pay 10,000 naira to travel to a distance for one party or social gathering or the other, and you can pay 20,000 naira, 5,000, 3,000 naira just to buy an Ashoebi that you use maybe once and you're done with it. Why can't you invest that same amount of money to go to the registration polling unit of INEC, wherever they are? Besides, it's easy to Google. You just Google the cvr.inecnigeria.org and you will get it. It's right there. You can do it from your home. Many persons at least have that same level of access. But another conversation is this. Our people need to understand this as citizens, that politics is about decision making. If you keep your voice silent, nobody will hear you. If you do not engage, nobody will see you. If you do not question and demand accountability in leadership and governance, nobody will care about how things affect you. So we have stayed in a country where we've been too silent for too long. Too long that, no, we have got to begin to understand that speaking is not noise making on social media. Neither should we be condemning those who go and register for their PVCs. And for those who go out to vote, you don't also condemn them. The reality is, if you have a situation where there are 55 million registered voters, and only of this number, perhaps 25 million are the one who goes out to vote, what happened to the remaining 15 voters, the remaining 25 million voters? They have just rendered the whole system, right, comatose, as it were. They just destroyed the system. Because though they have the voters, their PVC, and the access to voting, they did not participate. And when you do not participate in something, how can you have more voice? And we want to get to a point where we understand that these guys, politicians, elected officials, public officers, are where they are today because somebody exercised the right to vote. The insecurity we see today, imagine we go back to 2015 and reinvent the wheel and change the trajectory of those who participated in voting. The outcome we have today would have been different in terms of leadership. That is fact. Now, flip it back to where we are now in 2022. We're now saying that you can reverse that again in 2023. And how do you do that? You can be part of the process. We have to get to a point where we know that civic right, civic duty, civic responsibility, and civic engagement, it is your human right. And you have to exercise it by participating in the process and understanding that election doesn't end on the day you vote. It continues way after the day you vote. You follow them to their offices, you write petition to their offices, you go to their offices and visit them. If you go to them and say you want to have a meeting with them, they don't engage you, then it is your right to actually take them to court for saying that they denied you access to speaking to your elected official. These are the kinds of awareness I'm talking about. Nigerians don't even know they have this power to actually hold these guys accountable. When the NSAS manifested itself the way it did, it showed that when people work together collectively, they can bring about a change that they seek. It will not be a one-off. It's going to be consistent. Let us just remember that the process of election, the process of electoral engagement never ends on the day of voting. It continues even while the person is in the office, and that's the power of your PVC to recall a representative that is not doing well, to make sure that the House of Representative members who are supposed to be checking the executive are also doing their bit. And how do they do their bit? You keep them on their toes. and make sure they don't relax and feel that that office is a place for them to just go enjoy the largesse of the office and they don't do nothing.
Indeed, Lady Umukoro, interesting point you just made there. Civic duty, engagement, making a difference, and of course, accountability. But let's narrow this down to some specifics here. In your foray into the media, how much has investigative journalism impacted public policy formulation by governments over time? Are people in authority swayed by media revelations and public opinion, you think?
Yes, to a very large extent. That's a very powerful question, you know. The thing is this. Investigative journalism's job is to see to it that, one, we dig at facts that we know nothing about. Two, expose gaps that may exist. Three, measure impact of laws and policies, their implementation and non-implementation. Five, you also begin to check and say, if this impact is happening like this, what can we do differently? How do we provide solutions through solutions journalism, which is actually part of what investigative journalism to be all about? So if we go out, for example, like the VAP Act, imagine the media organization consciously take the breakdown of that VAP Act, section by section. Like, for example, the section that talks about electoral violence. Anybody who is involved in electoral violence will go to jail. There are about 28 states in Nigeria that has passed the VAP Act, that is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. We need all 36 states in Nigeria to pass that VAP because it speaks against electoral violence. Now, when we as a people understand that we take this information, we go with the legislator, we see how what we have found out shows the realities on ground with the people, and then we make a relationship with the legislature in the sense of having a constant stakeholders meeting, having a conversation of this and say, look, our investigation has shown that this policy that is not yet passed is a problem. Imagine during the 8th Senate, they started, that was the one led by Dr. Bukola Saraki, that is, they passed the Gender Equality Bill, the Gender Equality Opportunity Bill, as of 2016. Imagine it took the sex for grade scandal for the current government to now finally assent to that bill in 2017, 2018, when the height of it became something. So investigation has revealed, the media, the journalists have done so much work to say, look, there is a problem with sex for grades in our institutions. And then that became a discussion at the legislative level. At the legislative level, they now said, okay, it's important we pass the Gender Equality Opportunity Bill to address sexual harassment in our institutions, our educational institutions in Nigeria, to make sure that these young girls and boys are protected from predators who are lecturer in disguise. And if that had been done, as at when it was done and implemented and enforced, we will now be able to say and come back as journalists and say, you know what, we're beginning to see a reduction in the figures based on this policy that has been implemented. And then the media carries that kind of conversation. So our job at the end of the day is trying to balance, one, making sure, one, the legislature does their job, the executive assents to it, and all of these conversations are addressed as at when they should be done immediately. So we need a situation where the legislative will respect the fourth estate, which is the media, not threaten them, not try to disrespect them. And what we have seen, we need that playing field, the freedom for the media to exercise its job. That's why we're the fourth estate. And we need the legislature and the executive to respect that going forward.
5 minutes left with you, and I would like to ask at this point, I know that you deal with a lot of facts and data, so I'd like to ask you if any of which of the presidential aspirants might resonate with you based on track record and the fact digging that you might have done so far.
I am one who advocates for the voices of women. I am one who advocates for the rights of the young people to be in part of governance, so that the earlier they get into governance, the more experience they will get, the capacities they will build will be enormous, and their level of understanding the core issues will be broader. in the many aspirants that have shown their capacity, someone I go back to when I see his record back in Kwara State was what he did when he was governor of Kwara State. And what did he do? He made sure that every vice chairman was a woman in all the senatorial districts that they had in Kwara State. Specifically, he ensured that in his own constituency, Kwara West, the women who were the local government chairperson, the persons who were local government chairperson were women. Now, that is how to what? Apply the gender bill into force. For somebody to do that as at 2003, 2007, when we're not even having this conversation, that's a visionary person for me on the one hand. Then somebody who has been able to blend both the private sector and the public sector together, understands the working machinery between these two. I have seen his own public record. Somebody who was able to introduce ATM to us more than 29 years ago when we knew nothing about ATM in Nigeria. That's his visionary leadership. That is the capacity to anticipate ahead. Somebody who, while even at the 8th Senate, when he led it as the president of the Senate, was able to pass 331 bills, right? And 51 of them were reform bills. And of these reform bills, something that concerns, for example, me in the Niger Delta, the petroleum industry bill was passed finally by this sitting government. This was a bill that began when Dr. Bukola Saraki and his 8th Senate team sat together and said, you know what? These are issues, we have to tackle them. The Police Reform Act, they started that. The CAMA, that is the Company and Allies Matters Act, that has been passed today, all started a conversation from a leadership that understood the problem, investigate issues, bring them to the floor, have the people talk about the people's problem, and begin to address them head on. This was somebody who, because he went against the grain of what was popular, became unpopular, but he didn't mind. Even while out of office, this person continues to work on the National Reconciliation Strategic Committee to see how they can bridge the party together, bridge different divides together, put religious people together in one state and respect them. Somebody who understands that passing the not too young to run bill, right, in the 8th Senate, which our young persons are enjoying today, that shows inclusion, that shows capacity to empower the young people to be a voice as well. And Dr. Bukola Saraki has shown that record for me, and that is somebody I think with that kind of record, outstanding with the teams that surround him, young people, vibrant, also energetic and willing to do the work and exert the kind of thing we want with fresh leadership, with addressing cost of living, addressing the issues of insecurity, like he did when he passed the 14-day moratorium regarding the gun amnesty to remove guns from off the streets. That was magical. That was extraordinary. We need that kind of effective leadership in Nigeria where implementing policies is a given, not a condition.
All right. Interesting perspective by Lady Ejiro Umukoro. She's a policy advocate and, of course, an author. I'd like to thank you very much for your perspective on those issues. It's good to have you on this Easter edition of Newsday. It's good to have you.